There was a voice memo on her smartwatch that played as soon as I tapped the screen to check the time. It was supposed to be a meditation chime, but instead it started with a man laughing and whispering, "You're even more flexible than last time, baby." I remember thinking, why does the smartwatch even have a speaker? Before the sound of skin slapping and her voice moaning his name came through like it was echoing inside my skull. I stood there in the kitchen, stirring turmeric into her morning smoothie, listening to her orgasm on loop while her supposedly sacred yoga retreat in Sedona entered its third week. She hadn't taken that watch with her. She left it behind because she needed to unplug, and yet here it was, syncing automatically to the home Wi-Fi, dutifully preserving her little field recordings like a devotional diary of betrayal. I didn't rage or scream or throw the thing into the sink. I simply took a sip of her smoothie, tasted the ginger she always overused, and walked out to the garden to feed the koi like nothing happened. That was the moment, the first break. Not when she kissed me goodbye at the airport 3 weeks ago with that overcompensating squeeze on my hand, or when she sent me daily text about how she was finally aligning her spirit, but this, her moans captured by a device meant for breathing reminders. The rest of the day unraveled like a long, bitter joke I had to keep laughing at under my breath. I noticed the bedsheets were changed. She never changes them before a trip. That's always my chore. Her pillow smelled faintly of sandalwood and sweat, and I don't use her scent diffuser because it gives me headaches. The laundry basket had his tank top folded neatly on top, gray, stretched out, and definitely not mine. She must have washed it by accident in her post-coital fog, thinking it was hers. Or maybe she left it for me to find, subconsciously craving to be exposed, like a dog who knows it shit on the carpet but still sits wagging by the door. Later that evening, I stood in her sacred meditation room, where she used to chant and sob after long shifts at the wellness clinic. Her crystals were all perfectly arranged, but one was cracked in half. The obsidian orb she said protected her from toxic energy split down the center like it had been dropped in haste. Her yoga mat was still unrolled. There was a long, blonde hair wound around the incense stick like a fuse waiting to be lit. I'm brunette. She's brunette. The guy she once mentioned from her retreat leader's Instagram, the one who taught tantric breathing techniques in Bali, he had blonde surfer hair. I remembered. She described him once like he was a spiritual James Dean with a chiseled soul. Said it in passing, half laughing, when I asked what kind of people go to those things. I took my time. I didn't drink, didn't confront her, didn't call. Instead, I made a list. Of her passwords, she never logged out of anything. Of the contacts she mentioned over the years, their names, vague timelines, how she said nothing happened with them but always looked away when I asked twice. I started journaling too, daily notes, dates, patterns of behavior. She always underestimated me because I never raised my voice. Said I suppressed emotion. Said I was too logical to understand her soul's evolution. But logic is what saved me. And it's what would destroy her, quietly, slowly, with surgical precision. I played the voice memo again before bed, this time with noise-canceling headphones, eyes closed, listening like a detective reliving the crime scene. Her voice dropped to a whisper at one point. He doesn't even know how gone I already am. I smiled. Because she was wrong. I knew exactly how gone she was. And by the time she came back, I'd make sure she believed leaving me was her idea, her beautiful, liberating leap into nothingness. All I had to do now was let her hang herself with the silk rope of her own delusions. The trap had already sprung. She started with plants. That's how the new version of her arrived, trickling in with potted succulents and hanging ferns she never cared for before. One day our living room was minimal, warm, familiar. The next, it looked like a yoga influencer's Pinterest board threw up on it. She called it reclaiming our space. Except it didn't feel like our space anymore. It felt curated, like a stage for someone else's performance. Then came the mood boards, the crystal grids, the vision journals she kept stacked on the table like religious texts. She started referring to her evenings as ritual time, which meant I wasn't supposed to interrupt her between 8 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., even for something as small as a hug. I didn't ask questions. I told myself this was her way of coping, healing, thriving. That's what her therapist, whom I paid for, said she needed. Space. Freedom. Uninterrupted cycles of introspection. I made dinner most nights. I cleaned. I did the laundry. I kept the house quiet and warm and undemanding. I asked how her day was. She said productive, then stared at her phone like the screen held more meaning than I ever could. The intimacy dried up in slow, quiet increments. First it was, I'm tired. Work was emotionally draining. Then, I just need a few days to center myself. Then it became weeks of polite pecks on the cheek and long hours locked away in the guest room she converted into her creative sanctuary. She used to write there. Poetry, short stories, stream of consciousness rants that she asked me to read and critique. Now, she kept the door closed. I wasn't invited anymore. I once walked past and heard music playing softly, something low and rhythmic, too sensual for solitude. But when I knocked, she snapped, "I'm in a vulnerable space right now." Vulnerable. That word used to mean she needed my arms. Now it meant, go away. The bed started feeling too large for one person and too cold for two. Her side smelled like lavender and sandalwood. Mine smelled like disappointment. Her phone began following her everywhere, even into the bathroom, which she never used to do. She said it was for music, meditations, affirmations, healing sounds. But I noticed how quickly the screen would go black when I passed by. I once reached for it when it buzzed across the counter, and she snatched it away like I'd tried to grab her heart through her chest. "I need boundaries," she said. "I need to feel like my inner world is safe from codependency." I nodded like a well-trained fool. I said I understood. I wanted to believe she was growing, not leaving. But deep down, something old and primal stirred, the knowledge that this wasn't growth. This was withdrawal. This was subtraction disguised as evolution. She changed her wardrobe too. The soft, practical clothes she used to wear were replaced by flowy, revealing outfits she said made her feel like a goddess. I told her she looked beautiful. She didn't respond. Her laughter became louder, but never with me. I heard it during late-night FaceTime she took outside, barefoot on the patio with a glass of wine. "It's just Brianna," she once said. "We're decompressing." I didn't know Brianna had a deep male voice that laughed like it had its hands all over her. I played dumb. I let her have her decompression. One day, she casually mentioned she might go on a solo retreat to align her heart chakra. I offered to join her, said we could use the time together. She blinked at me like I had suggested joining her in a locked bathroom. "That would defeat the point," she said, gently, like I was too small-minded to understand spiritual logistics. Her Instagram went private a few days after that. She said it was to avoid the toxic comparison culture. But then she made a new one she didn't tell me about, one I found by accident when her tablet synced while I was updating the OS. It was full of half-naked selfies, mantras about feminine power, and long captions about breaking free from the prison of expectations. I was never mentioned. Not once. Not in words. Not in pictures. I scrolled through her curated escape and realized I didn't exist in the world she was trying to manifest. I was just the wallpaper, still, silent, functional. Her purchases changed, too. Random Amazon boxes arrived with books about awakening, tantric energy, and unblocking your divine gates. I checked our account. She'd spent over $800 on something called the Divine Partner Masterclass. I asked if we could go over the finances. She rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be controlling." The cracks were everywhere, but they made no sound. She still smiled when we had dinner with friends, still held my hand in public when it suited her image. But her eyes had the vacant brightness of someone who'd already moved on, spiritually and emotionally, and was just waiting for the right moon phase to make it official. I kept pretending. I kept hoping. I kept trusting, even as the warmth drained from her voice and her presence turned into a curated absence. I told myself we were just going through a phase. I didn't realize that the phase was called the end. It happened on a Tuesday, of course it did. Tuesdays are invisible days, too dull for betrayal, which made what I saw burn even deeper. I was setting up the living room speaker for a work Zoom call, making sure the Bluetooth synced right, when her phone auto-connected instead. She'd left it charging on the kitchen island, screen down, forgotten, if only briefly. I wasn't trying to pry. I didn't tap anything. It just played, suddenly, like a confession from God himself. Her voice, playful, laughing, higher pitched than she ever laughed with me. "You made me sore," she said, then added, "I couldn't walk right all weekend." Then the man's voice responded, thick with pride, joking about how maybe next time she'd scream so loud the neighbors would call the cops again. Again. The word echoed like a gunshot inside my chest. There was a pause, then a long, wet kiss. Then her voice again, soft, breathless. "He has no clue. He thinks I'm on a cleanse this week." My hands didn't shake. I didn't even blink. I simply stood there, like a photograph of a man listening to the moment his universe turned inside out. The Zoom call started without me. The chime dinged. Colleagues said my name through the speaker, but their voices sounded like they came from the bottom of a well. I let it all happen around me. Emails, notifications, sounds of the street. and just stood there, staring at the phone like it was a corpse I had just discovered. She came home that night humming. She kissed me on the cheek, dropped a canvas bag full of overpriced green juices onto the counter, and said, "I feel like I'm finally healing." I asked how her cleanse was going, and she smiled without looking me in the eyes. "Revelatory," she said. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake the lie out of her teeth. But instead, I just nodded, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I was happy for her. That's when the detachment started. Not the emotionless kind, not numbness, but a clear, tactical coldness, like stepping into another skin. A better version of me slipped silently into the driver's seat. I became still, studying. Every interaction from that moment forward turned into data. Her stories, her receipts. The way she said she was going to a sound bath on Thursday, but I noticed the same Thursday. Her gym pass didn't register a check-in and her car had sand on the floor mat, even though the studio was in the city. I became patient, unreasonably so. She started calling me more relaxed lately. Said the tension between us was dissolving. And I agreed. I told her I respected her journey. I told her I wanted her to grow. She lit up like a child getting permission to play outside. That night, she left her phone unlocked, and I didn't even need to go far. There was a draft message on her notes app. Plans for a trip to Big Sur with him. Romantic dates. Secret playlists. A list of things she wanted to try in bed that sounded like she'd been watching amateur porn behind my back and taking notes. Not once did my name appear. Not once did she hesitate. She was preparing a new life like I was already dead. I turned off the light, kissed her shoulder while she slept, and started moving chess pieces in my mind. She thought she had time. She thought she had power. She thought I was blind, docile, dim. And that would be her greatest mistake. Because what she didn't know, what she would never see coming, was that I had just switched on. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her reckoning. I became her ghost. Not the haunting kind. The kind that lingers in shadows, unnoticed, memorizing footprints and echoing her movements back in reverse. I knew confrontation was worthless. She'd only twisted into a pity spiral about feeling controlled or misunderstood. No, I needed her to feel safe, to believe she was still dancing in secret, while I had already turned on the floodlights behind the curtain. My first move was subtle. I synced her calendar to a cloned version I mirrored on my own device. She'd left her iPad unlocked one evening while she meditated in the other room, humming some nonsense mantra. I copied every event, every vague entry labeled solo time or energy realignment. Then I began testing. I dropped bait. "Hey, do you want me to book dinner Thursday?" Knowing full well Thursday was one of her so-called moon bathing nights. She'd pause, blink, and give some perfectly rehearsed line about needing time for reflection, her voice sugar-coated with sanctimony. I'd smile and nod, already knowing she'd booked a massage at 7 p.m. and a hotel room under the name of her business account at 8:15. I wasn't angry. I was impressed. She thought she was careful. She thought she was sophisticated. I decided to show her what real sophistication looked like. Next, I set a trap through her best friend, Mila. I created a fake Instagram account, filled it with photos of a vaguely spiritual, tan-skinned guy with a guitar and a sunset obsession. I followed Mila. Within a day, she followed back. Within a week, she responded to him, liking one of her older photos with a flirty emoji. That was my in. I struck up a fake conversation. Asked about local yoga studios. Asked if she was single. She said she wasn't, but that her best friend has a wild side you wouldn't believe. I played dumb. I asked for pics. She sent one of them at brunch, clinking champagne. I asked if the wild friend was single. Mila replied, "Not technically, but emotionally?" Absolutely. That confirmed it. If Mila knew, then it wasn't a fling. It was something deeper. Coordinated. Covered. Practiced. I saved every screenshot. Every timestamp. Every pixel. Then I went after her finances. We had a shared bank account, but she insisted on keeping her sacred spending separate. It was part of her independence manifesto. What she didn't know was that when she added her cards to the Apple Pay profile on her tablet, she'd enabled transaction alerts to my email, thinking they were just digital receipts. So I watched the breadcrumbs build. Hotel stays build under vague names like coastal wellness suites, boutique gift shops in neighborhoods she never mentioned, and worst of all, a recurring charge every Friday night for a parking garage 2 blocks from a private loft she didn't know I knew about. She never parked in garages. She said the energy felt sterile. Apparently sterile was acceptable if the lighting was good enough to undress under. I checked our Google Home history next. Voice commands. Her own words asking to play Romantic Chill Vibes at 10:47 p.m. 3 nights ago, right before she texted me she was journaling under the stars. Stars, it turns out, do not leave cologne on your inner thighs. My next move required precision. I arranged for flowers to be delivered to her at work, but instead of using her name, I sent them under a slightly misspelled version of her lover's name, along with a note that read, "Last night was beyond anything I imagined. Can't wait to see you again." I waited. That evening, she came home quiet, tense. I watched her out of the corner of my eye as she checked her phone every few minutes, probably wondering if her lover had sent the flowers and just didn't mention it. But he hadn't. I had. And now she was doubting the one thing she was most certain of. Doubt is a seed. I planted it deep. That night, while she soaked in her Himalayan salt bath, I scrolled through her shared drive. She'd once connected it to mine for accountability, back when she wanted us to write poetry together. She forgot to unshare it. Tucked inside a folder labeled Workshop Notes was a journal file she probably assumed was invisible. I opened it. Page after page of her describing their meetups. His body. His wildness. The way she had to play nice at home to keep the illusion alive. She described me as safe. Predictable. A blanket she'd outgrown. I read it twice, not because I needed clarity, but because I wanted to burn the version of myself that still loved her down to the roots. I didn't delete anything. I copied it. Backed it up to 3 separate drives. Uploaded key images and entries to a password-protected site she didn't know existed. The final step came when I began recording. I installed a simple voice-activated recorder under the seat of her car. Legal in our state, by the way, so long as one party consents. And I did. I heard everything. Phone calls with him. Her describing how she'd leave soon, once she found the right excuse. Her laughing about how easy I made things. How spiritually open I was. Her words. Not mine. I listened. I didn't break. I simply built. Because if she thought the worst thing I could do was find out, she had no idea what I was about to become. She walked into the rooftop bar in slow motion, her heels clicking like tiny hammers of fate against the marble floor, eyes scanning the lounge for me, lips painted in that soft coral shade she only wore when she wanted to look effortlessly desirable. I had reserved the best table, by the glass, overlooking the skyline, the exact place we'd celebrated our 3rd anniversary, back when her touch meant something more than a transaction of guilt and distraction. She spotted me and smiled like nothing had ever broken, like her world hadn't cracked into treachery and deceit. She moved toward me with an actress's poise, as if this were just another night, another conversation, another sip of overpriced wine under city lights. I stood and pulled out her chair. She sat. I ordered her favorite, Chardonnay from that little Napa vineyard she pretended to adore for the social clout. We talked about nothing. The weather. The traffic. She said the retreat had opened her chakras in ways she hadn't expected. I said I was glad she found peace. Then I reached into my jacket and placed a small velvet box on the table. She blinked. Her hand floated toward it, slow, cautious, greedy. "What is this?" she asked, tone laced with premature victory. "Open it," I said. She did. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a flash drive. Just a basic, black, plastic rectangle with a single word written in white ink across the surface. Everything. She stared at it, face twitching in microscopic spasms, the kind that betray the body's effort to hold back a flood. "What is this? A joke?" She laughed, voice a pitch too high. I didn't smile. "No," I said. "It's footage. Audio. Screenshots. Messages. Calendar logs. Location data. And a few voice notes you might want to hear again, especially the one where you said I was just a warm body to keep the rent steady while you spread your soul across his back seat." Her face collapsed like a building losing structural integrity floor by floor. "It's not what you think," she started. I raised my hand, not to silence her, just to make space for her to bury herself. "We were just talking at first," she offered next, voice shrinking. "He really listened to me." "You never really." Her voice faded when she saw the look in my eyes, not fury, not heartbreak, just clarity. Cold, unshakable clarity. "I paid the bill for your voice lessons," I said. "I built your website. I stayed up proofreading your poetry until 3 a.m. before your little open mic showcases. So no, I don't think listening was the problem." Her face tightened, a spark of defiance returning like a dog baring its teeth when cornered. You smothered me, she said. You always made me feel like I owed you something. Maybe if you treated me like an equal instead of a project. I nodded slowly, letting the silence wrap around us like fog. The server approached to top off her wine, but she waved him off with a trembling hand. You set me up, she snapped. You waited. You plotted. What kind of sick game is this? Her voice was cracking now, anger unraveling into something rawer. I didn't set you up, I said, voice calm enough to make her flinch. I just stopped looking away. She leaned forward, desperation leaking through her mascara. You think you're so perfect? You think you've never made mistakes? You think spying on your own wife makes you a hero? I met her eyes without blinking. No, I said, but it does make me someone who finally stopped playing dumb so you could pretend to be someone you're not. She scoffed, laughed bitterly, sat back, and crossed her arms like a child who'd lost a game she didn't understand the rules to. You'll never find someone who understands you like I did, she hissed. I took a slow sip of water, letting her sit in the echo of that sentence. I already have, I said quietly. Her head snapped toward me. That wasn't in her script. She knows everything. Every file. Every message. Every plan I made. And she's better than you in every possible way. The mocking confidence drained from her like someone pulled the plug from a tub full of lies. For a moment she didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just sat there, processing the fact that she wasn't the one holding the knife, she was the one already bleeding. You bastard, she whispered, almost reverently. Not even close, I said. You haven't met that man yet. Her lip trembled. Her hands clenched in her lap. The buzz of the rooftop faded around us, the music soft, the laughter of other couples sounding like ghosts in another life. She looked like she wanted to scream, or cry, or beg, but I had robbed her of every script she rehearsed in the mirror. And I wasn't done. Not yet. I leaned back, folded my hands on the table, and waited for what? I hadn't decided. But the air between us was thick enough to drown in. She shifted in her seat. So what happens now? She finally asked, voice small, broken, almost childlike. I didn't answer. Not yet. She broke first. The silence between us stretched just a little too long, and in that unbearable pause where she realized I wasn't going to scream or sob or beg, something in her cracked. Say something, she spat, voice jagged, desperate to spark anything in argument, a fight, a flicker of the old dynamic where my pain gave her control. But I just looked at her. Not through her. Not around her. Directly at her, as if seeing her for the first time, stripped of all the performance, all the curated spirituality and soft-spoken deceit. That stare was worse than shouting. It gave her nothing to grab onto. So she changed gears. You smothered me, she snapped, louder this time, arms crossing tight around her ribs like she was trying to hold her spine in place. Every dream I had, you tried to support it like I was your charity case. You never treated me like a partner, just a project to manage. Her eyes searched for some reaction, a twitch, a flinch, even a blink, but I gave her none. Just a slow sip of my drink. She hated that. Hated how small it made her feel. You think this is all me? She hissed, leaning in now, her nails scratching the edge of the table. You think I just woke up one day and decided to cheat? You drained me. You made me feel invisible. You were boring. Do you hear me? Boring. Like being married to a spreadsheet. Her lip curled when she said it, waiting for the sting to land, but I only nodded slightly and said, and yet, you still lied to keep the spreadsheet around. That hit. Her nostrils flared, her hands clenched, but I didn't let her speak. You didn't cheat because you were unloved. You cheated because you loved the idea of being adored with none of the responsibility. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Don't psychoanalyze me like I'm your damn patient, she barked. You always act like you're above everything. Like you're some calculating robot. You're not a man, you're a machine. Then why are you the one falling apart? I asked, voice so calm it made her recoil. She stood abruptly, then sat again, unable to decide whether to fight or flee. You're doing this on purpose, she said, almost whining now. You're trying to make me look crazy. You're trying to twist everything. You twisted it yourself, I said. I just held up the mirror. Her voice cracked. I made one mistake. You made 100 choices, I replied. You just thought none of them would cost you. Her hands shook now. Not with rage. With fear. Because the man across from her was no longer the foundation she could guilt, manipulate, or seduce. He was a clean slate with nothing left to lose, and nothing more to give. You're heartless, she whispered, eyes wet. You used to hold me when I cried. Now you just sit there. I used to believe the tears were real, I said. Now I know they're just part of the play. She gasped, like I'd slapped her. but I hadn't moved. You think this makes you strong? She snapped. Sitting there like a statue, like you're above feeling anything? Real men fight for love. Real men don't let everything fall apart just to say, I told you so. I let the silence swallow her whole before I said, real men don't fight for someone who already left them in her head 6 months ago. That shattered her. Visibly. Her shoulders slumped, her mask slipping as reality bled in at the edges. You're going to regret this, she said, voice trembling now, no longer venomous, just scared. I gave you everything. I was there for you too. I was loyal for years. Doesn't that count for anything? So does the bullet you didn't fire, I said. But it doesn't undo the one you did. Her face crumpled. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I'll go to therapy. I'll change. Just don't give up on us. You gave up on us the moment you stopped being honest, I said. This isn't punishment. This is the bill for the lies you lived on credit. She shook her head. You're really not coming back from this, are you? I already left, I said. You just didn't notice because you were too busy performing. The air between us turned thick again, heavier than before. She sat there, broken but still trying to piece together a mask, some final angle, some last thread of control. But there was none left. I had taken the one thing she never expected me to reclaim, my indifference. And nothing scared her more than knowing she no longer had any power to hurt me. I began by building a fortress around myself, one she wouldn't see until it was too late to breach. Every account was changed: emails, banking, utilities, streaming, even that stupid grocery delivery service she loved for the organic blueberries and faux vegan snacks she ordered on my card. Passwords reset. Two-factor authentication enabled. Access revoked. She never noticed, because I left just enough trail behind, some shared transactions, some leftover logins, to keep the illusion alive. Then I got quiet. Strategically quiet. Not passive, not detached, silent the way a sniper is silent. I trained on a target, breathing measured. I took a week off work under the guise of burnout leave, but I spent every hour preparing. Evidence? Already secured. Every photo, message, voice note, and Google location ping organized into folders with timestamps, exported to 3 encrypted hard drives, uploaded to a secure cloud under a private account she didn't know existed. I had a spreadsheet, 2 names, dates, receipts, mileage comparisons. She was going to drown in her own data trail. The next step was legal. I found a divorce attorney with a reputation for surgical precision. I gave him everything. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't need to. The moment he opened the file folder I handed him, he just looked at me and said, "She's going to walk into this completely blind, isn't she?" I nodded. "Good," he said. "That's the only way this works." We filed the paperwork discreetly, under a sealed motion to prevent her from getting wind of it before the necessary financial transfers were executed. I had the house in my name, something she never cared to notice when she moved in. I refinanced without her input, citing sole ownership, and moved the equity into a private trust. The joint bank account? Drained to the cent, with every transaction accounted for in the filing marked as reimbursements for marital contributions she could never prove she made. Her personal card? Still active, but I let it run just long enough to cover 1 more massage, 2 dinners, and a hotel stay with her alignment partner. Then I disputed the charges and froze the account. I wasn't done. I informed our utility companies of a separation notice, effective immediately. Everything that was once in both our names became mine alone, and her name disappeared from every bill, lease, and insurance policy like it had never existed. She wouldn't know until her phone died and she couldn't reach tech support because the account no longer recognized her. Then came the professional kill shot. I sent a package, neatly organized, no angry letters, no commentary, to her clinic's HR department. Just documents. Screenshots of her explicit messages sent during office hours. Logs of phone calls she made to her lover on company time. Photos that clearly showed her wearing her uniform in places no employee should have been. I sent a backup copy, digitally this time, to the clinic director with a brief note. This should help clarify where her energy has truly been focused. That was it. No slander. Just facts. The kind that don't get argued. They get processed and filed under termination. Her best friend? She was easy. After all, Mila had already taken the bait from my fake Instagram persona. I compiled every flirtatious message, every compromising photo she'd sent, and posted them, anonymously, on a private forum that several of Mila's family and friends followed. No names, just faces, and timestamps that spoke louder than any accusation. Within 2 hours, Mila blocked her on everything. Her mother called her a disgrace. The friend circle she'd built her fake goddess persona on? Gone. Burned to ash in the fire of their shared duplicity. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to scream. I let the world do it for me. Finally, I timed the crescendo. On the morning the divorce papers were to be served, I made sure she received a single envelope first, a hand-delivered package with a USB drive inside, labeled only with the date of our wedding anniversary. When she opened the files, she would find the life she tried to build in secret, a full dossier of her betrayal, curated with the care of someone who once truly loved her. Then, 2 hours later, the knock on the door would come. She'd open it thinking it was a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, it would be the process server. Calm. Polite. You've been served. The shock wouldn't come all at once. It would trickle in slowly, cruelly. When she tried to log into her accounts. When her card got declined. When her boss didn't return her calls. When her backup plan turned out to be nothing more than a man who liked the idea of her better than the reality. I timed everything so that by the end of the week, she'd have nowhere left to run. No money. No job. No allies. Just the empty echo of her own choices. And the memory of a man she once thought would never leave until he did, without a single backward glance. It happened at her mother's birthday party, an upscale dinner at a quiet, expensive Italian restaurant, surrounded by soft candlelight, the clinking of wine glasses, and family members dressed in their polished Sunday best. She had picked out the venue herself, insisting on something elegant, intimate, spiritual, as if Parmesan shavings and exposed brick could redeem a soul. I showed up right on time, dressed in the gray suit she once said made me look presidential. She greeted me at the entrance with a smile that faltered just for a split second, like her body sensed something was wrong before her mind caught up. I kissed her cheek like I used to, then took her hand in mine and led her inside. The table was already full, her parents, her sister, a few cousins, a couple of her yoga friends, and Mila, who hadn't made eye contact with her all evening. She noticed that. I could see her scanning faces, noting absences of smiles, warmth, acknowledgement. Something was off, and she could feel it crawling over her skin like an itch she couldn't reach. The waiter brought champagne. I raised my glass, looked around the table, and said, "Before we toast, I just want to share something important. A gift, really, meant to clarify things. For everyone." She laughed nervously, glancing around, a small puff of air escaping her lips like she expected a slideshow of vacation photos or some inside joke. Instead, I slid a tablet across the table, screen already lit, folder labeled Truth. Her sister opened it. The room fell silent. Video first, her voice, unmistakable, giggling about being sore from someone who wasn't me. Then a photo, her in bed, snapped by her lover, time-stamped with the same night she told her mother she was attending a women's circle. Then the messages, her words, dripping with betrayal, filled with plans to leave, to manipulate, to milk me dry before making her grand escape. Her father stared at the screen like it was bleeding. Her mother's mouth fell open. Her sister whispered Jesus Christ and covered her face. Mila stood up and walked away without saying a word. And the best part? She tried to laugh. Actually laughed. A high-pitched, broken thing that cracked halfway out of her throat like it had never been real. Okay, this is ridiculous, she said, looking at me, then around the table. This is obviously taken out of context. He's been manipulating things, digging into private. You said those things, her mother cut in, voice shaking. You sent those pictures. That's your voice. No, but she stammered. You don't understand. We were going through a rough patch. He was cold. He made me feel like I had no choice. So you cheated? Her father snapped. You humiliated your husband, your family, for what? For him. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just watched her. Watched her flail, watched her scan the room for a single sympathetic face and find none. She turned to Mila next. You're seriously judging me? You? After everything I know about you? Mila shook her head. The difference is I never pretended to be better than everyone. You did. You lived off his loyalty and told the world you were healing. You're a liar, and you're toxic. You're all insane, she finally shouted, stepping back from the table like the whole room had lunged at her. This is a setup. You've all been brainwashed by him. He's been planning this. He's sick. Her voice cracked on the last word, the desperation crawling into her tone like smoke through a locked door. He's not even saying anything. Look at him. He's loving this. All eyes turned to me. I smiled. Just a little. Just enough. I'm not loving this, I said, quietly. I'm remembering it. That's when her hands trembled. That's when her breath stuttered. That's when she realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. She tried to speak again, but no sound came out. Her mother looked away. Her father called for the check. And she stood there, alone in the middle of the table she had once ruled over, eyes wide and wet, mouth open like a child lost in a mall. I didn't move. I didn't rise. I didn't need to. Because this was what justice looked like. Not loud, not violent, not theatrical, just silent, sharp, and absolute. And as she turned slowly, choking back something between a sob and a scream, and walked out of the restaurant with every eye burning a hole in her back, she looked over her shoulder one last time, searching for me. But all she saw was a man sitting calmly at a table she could never return to. And that's what broke her. It erupted in the worst possible place, her cousin's engagement party, a backyard affair full of fairy lights and fake laughter, where everyone was pretending they hadn't seen her digital collapse 2 weeks earlier. I wasn't supposed to be there. I had declined the invitation. But her mother called me personally, said it would mean a lot to the family if I came, that no matter what happened, I was still part of them. So I showed up, quiet, alone, dressed in black, like I'd come to bury something. And as fate would have it, she was already there, sipping white wine, laughing a little too loudly with people who used to look up to her but now just smiled tight-lipped and nodded. She saw me and froze. A flicker of something crossed her face, anger, panic, maybe hope, but I didn't approach. I didn't even acknowledge her until her lover arrived. Late, smug, wearing sunglasses at night. The moment I saw him, I knew the universe was giving me permission. He strolled in like he belonged there, slapped backs, kissed cheeks, and walked straight to her like she was still a prize worth showing off. Then he kissed her, nothing scandalous, just a quick, familiar touch, like it was owed. I stood. That was enough. I crossed the yard, every eye turning as I approached them. She stepped back the moment I got close, hand gripping her glass too tight. "What are you doing?" she said, voice brittle, already cracking. "You're not welcome here." "No," I said, loud enough for the crowd to hush. "But he is." I pointed to the man beside her, who looked confused, then cautious. "You brought him to a family event? After everything you dragged us through?" She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the space. "You humiliated your parents, lied to every person here, and instead of shame, you bring your toy like he's part of the celebration?" Gasps. Whispers. Her father stood, arms crossed, jaw locked. Her mother looked like she might vomit. "This is not the place," she snapped. "You don't get to ruin another family moment just because you're still bitter." Bitter. I laughed. "You cheated, lied, manipulated. You tried to steal everything you could, and you call me bitter? You left a man who built you a life because some sweaty yoga reject called you a goddess while pulling your hair in a rented SUV." The crowd rippled, laughter from some, horror from others. Her face turned red. "You think you're so righteous?" she shrieked. "You think because you kept your voice down that makes you better? You're pathetic. You were never a man. You were a paycheck with a heartbeat. And you," I said, taking a step closer, "were a performance in a human costume. You loved being loved, but couldn't stomach returning it. You fed on loyalty until it bored you, then went looking for applause elsewhere." I was suffocating. She shouted. "You made me feel like I was drowning in your need to be perfect." "No," I said. "You were drowning in guilt. And instead of reaching for air, you dragged us both down because it was easier than admitting you were the problem." She was shaking now, glass still in hand, eyes wild, mascara smudging under the weight of heat and truth. "He understands me," she said, gesturing to her lover like a lifeline. "He sees me. He sees you." I smirked, then turned to the guy. "How long have you been sleeping with her friend Mila?" The crowd gasped again. Her eyes snapped wide. Her lover stuttered. "That's not... Wait. What?" "I have screenshots," I said. "You left your DMs open on her iPad during one of your little motel getaways. You were sending nudes to Mila while in bed with this one. So if you see her, it must be through someone else's legs." The man stepped back. She spun to face him. "Is that true?" she whispered, trembling. "Is that... You told me you loved me." I didn't know you were still with him," he tried to explain. "I thought you two were done." "You liar," she hissed, and for the first time, she wasn't talking to me. Her voice cracked, her body trembled, and the entire yard was a frozen theater of judgment. Phones came out. Someone started recording. Her cousin whispered, "Holy hell," into her drink. Her mother sat down, head in hands. Her father walked away entirely. "You ruined everything," she said to the man beside her. You used me." Guess that's something you finally understand, I said. How it feels to be someone's convenience. She turned back to me, a wreck now, face streaked with tears and shame. Why are you doing this? Why won't you just let it go? I stepped closer, and for the first time, she saw it. No anger, no pain, just the quiet satisfaction of justice. Because you don't get to walk away from the mess you made like it never happened. You don't get to live clean while I drown in your filth. And then I walked past her. Past him. Past the broken fragments of her illusion lying scattered across the grass. And she just stood there, sobbing in front of everyone, shaking under fairy lights that no longer made her look magical. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because I had already buried her, in truth, in silence, and in front of everyone she ever tried to impress. It didn't happen all at once, but it happened. The job was the first to go. Her manager didn't even call her in, just sent a formal termination letter citing conduct unbecoming of someone in her position. Apparently, screenshots of her work hours and her voice messages calling patients energy vampires weren't great for a holistic wellness brand. She tried to spin it online, claiming she was stepping away to heal, but people weren't buying her poetry anymore. Not when the same people who used to clap for her spoken word meditations now shared TikToks dissecting her downfall. Her followers dropped by the hundreds, then thousands. Her yoga group kicked her out. Mila never answered her calls again. Even the ones she thought were neutral started ghosting her. Her parents stopped replying to her daily affirmations in the family group chat. Her mother deleted her from Instagram entirely. Her father never said a word, just boxed up every childhood photo from their home and shipped it to her with no note. When she walked down the street in our old neighborhood, people looked through her like she was a window into something shameful. At the grocery store, a cashier she used to chat with turned off her light and walked away when she stepped into line. Her lover disappeared almost instantly, blocked her on everything. Rumor was he got back with his ex 2 weeks later. Moved to Florida. Started a podcast about spiritual masculinity. Meanwhile, she moved into a tiny apartment 2 towns over, above a vape shop, and next to a payday loan place. She started working at a discount wellness studio where the essential oils smelled like pine sol and the healing tea came from a microwave. Then came the messages. The first one was short. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Then longer ones. I made a mistake. I see that now. You were always there, and I was too blind to appreciate it. Please just talk to me. Still, nothing. Then the phone calls. She left voicemails sobbing, begging. Said she wasn't eating. Said she hadn't slept. Said she couldn't look in the mirror without seeing the woman who threw her life away. One day, she came to the house. She stood outside for nearly 15 minutes, just staring at the door. I watched her through the camera feed. Her makeup was gone, hair unwashed. She wore the same shirt she used to wear to bed. She didn't look like the woman I married. She didn't even look like a woman anymore, just the discarded skin of someone who once believed she could burn the world and not get touched by the flame. When I didn't answer, she finally knocked. Soft, hesitant, like she was afraid the sound itself would reject her. I opened the door. She gasped like she hadn't expected it. I'm sorry, she said immediately, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I looked at her, quiet, steady. She kept going. I lost everything. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I needed you to know. I still love you. I never stopped. I didn't know what I had until I destroyed it. I waited. I let her talk. Let her plead, confess, crumble. And then I said the last thing I would ever say to her. Just 5 words. You loved me like a liar. Her mouth dropped open, stunned by the finality. I closed the door. Slowly, quietly. And when it latched, I felt nothing. Not pain. Not joy. Just peace. The kind that comes not from forgiveness, but from knowing you never have to look back again. Thank you for listening to my story. Where are you listening from? And did you enjoy the ride?